Magyanatimirandasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namashreshtam Manumapi Satchiputram Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajamuro Purim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundan Gidivaram Maho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratitha Gripaya Shri Gurum Tamnatasmi Vancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhyaiva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nikhila Shruti Mole Ratnamala Dyuti Nirajita Badapankajanta Aji Mukta Kulai Rupashamanam Paritashram Harinam Samshrayami Anarpitacharim Chirat Karunaya Vatirna Kalo Shamar Paitamunnatojvalarasam Svabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadam Vasandipitah Sadha Hridaye Kandare Spurato Vasachinandanaha Ajanulambita Bujjo Kanakavadatu Sankirtanai Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dwijabaro Jugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Ladini Shakti Sarupaya Gauranga Suhridaya Cha Bhakta Shakti Pradhanaya Gadadhara Namostute He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karunamrita Vahini Kripaya Nijapadabja Dasyan Mahyam Pradiyatam Bhaktya Vihinaya Paradalakshay Shiptashtakamaditaranga Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanam Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam Sri Sachinandan Gaur Hari Ki Jai Sri Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai Sri Sri Gaur Gadadhar Ji Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Govind Ki Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Pramanand Hari Bol. So again, good evening, Pranam. We are continuing with this unending thread of topics on Sri Gaur Gadadhar in this case. Whenever we touch upon Harikathas, one name for Harikathas, Uddhav mentions in the Bhagavatam, Ananta Katha Rasasyam. No? Harikatha we can call Ananta Katha. Ananta Katha means converse topics about the unlimited, or therefore unlimited topics. If there are topics about the unlimited, by nature they have to be unlimited. There is never enough what we can say about unlimited. That's what the Vedanta Sutra says, the fifth sutra in the beginning. It says Ikshatena Shabda. So sometimes that's translated as we cannot say anything about the absolute. The absolute is too much. And our words are like what? Or sometimes our acharyas have translated that line is we can never say enough. We will try our best, but we will never say enough. So that will be the mixed feelings we will have. I'm trying to say as much as I can, but I can always say more. So talking about Krishna gives full satisfaction, but since there's always more to be said, there is this flavor of divine dissatisfaction that is never completed. No? That's why sometimes acharyas say, we'll put the katha to rest for a minute. But they are not saying we are concluding. No, we have finished talking about this. That shows that there was no Harikatha before those words. But putting Harikatha to rest means that's an unlimited thing and it's ongoing, so we can never conclude. So I'm saying this because as we were talking this day with Krishna Chandra Prabhu, it's not like we can finish any topic ever. So it's not, okay, we will talk about Gaura-Gadadhara in the next days. Do not think ever, okay, now I know it all about Gaura-Gadadhara. We have concluded the conversation. The more we talk, the more we will feel we are just like starting to open the gates to this unlimited realm. But that's the beauty of it. No? The more that unlimited gate opens, it shows us there's no end to how much we can dive into that ocean. And that's why the spiritual world has to exist, so to say, to allow eternally doing those things that we are already doing, and without the stop and without feeling satiated, feeling that's it, it's over. The very meaning of one of the words for the absolute is for God is Brahman. Brahman. Krishna is known as Para Brahman in the Bhagavatam many times. Aho bhagyam nanda gopa brajokasyam jam mitram paramanandam purna brahma sanat. Purna Brahma, Para Brahma. So, and the root, the dhatu of the word Brahman is Brim. Brimhati, and Brim means to expand, to grow. So that's interesting. No? The root of the word for the divine is to grow and to expand, implying he's constantly evolving, growing, unfolding, expanding. So how much we can talk about such realm that is in constant unfolding and evolution. We can just touch one point of an unlimited line, Srila Siddham Raj will say. That's our hope today. Let's just contact one point of an unlimited line. That will be enough to drown us, basically. One drop, as our acharyas will say. No? Srila Rupa Goswami named his book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was quick to author his own version, his own commentary with the word Bindu. No, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu. No? Rupa Goswami wrote about the ocean of Bhakti Rasa, and Vishwanath brought one drop from that ocean to show just one drop. I mean, what's a drop from that ocean? Just a drop is like, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So one drop of that quality, we are done with one drop. So that's where we are. He says something else, right? I want the translation.
Drowning all the universe is one drop.
Okay, thank you. Whenever he's adding some masala to my conflicts, be generous and yeah. I'm just saying with salt and oil, but he's putting gram masala to everything. So yeah. So please share those flavors with me also. Yeah. So that's our hope today, just to be sprinkled with at least one drop from that ocean. Like try to stand close to the ocean as the example is. So even if we are not able to jump into the ocean and swim in its depths, just trying to get closer, and when the waves hit the shore, like some drop, can sprinkle and bless our lives. So anyhow, so we are talking about this most oceanic katha, Gaura-Gadadhara, Gadai-katha, Gadadhara-katha. There are so many, if you will, categories of Harikatha, if you will. You can talk about Siddhanta, you can talk about Lila, you can talk about the glories of Harikatha. In itself is a form of Harikatha. To talk about Harikatha is a certain way of Harikatha. So there are so many departments in the Harikatha temple. So we are today entering in a very confidential chamber of Harikatha. Gadadhara-katha. It's like, okay, that's like the inner sanctum, so to say. So today in the morning, we were sharing a few words about the position of Gadadhar Pandit. He's the most important figure in the most important lila. Although he may be the last mentioned, which actually speaks about the confidentiality of that person. That someone is not to mention, it doesn't mean it's not so important. Probably it means exactly the opposite. It's something so intimate, so confidential, you cannot just broke like publicly for massive consumption, so to say. No? So the less mentioned, but the most important person of the most important lila. So how important should Gadadhar be in our lives, therefore? So we're describing many things today about Gadadhar Pandit. For some moments we talk about Gadadhar giving Bhagavad-katha to Mahaprabhu on a daily basis, and Mahaprabhu exposing himself to that influence to receive the bhakti samskaras he requires to become successful in tasting Radha Bhav. You follow? Mahaprabhu is Krishna, but Krishna needs to receive certain very specific bhakti samskars, devotional impressions, to taste Radha Bhav. And he can only, if he wants to taste Radha Bhav, the bhakti samskars he needs to receive should be coming from that person, from Radha. There's only one person, if you will, who have that experience of Radha Bhav, and that's Radha. So Krishna needs to receive those samskars from her, who in Gaura-lila appears as Gadadhar. So that's why Mahaprabhu is exposing on a daily basis to Gadadhar, receiving Gadadhar samskars, so to say, bhakti samskar from Gadadhar, from Sri Radha. So we mentioned how after tutoring Mahaprabhu for some time, Mahaprabhu became more and more able to relish Radha Bhav. And the more this happened, Gadadhar disappeared behind the curtain. Being very happy seeing his beloved being successful in his adventure, as we were mentioning. This is another topic, but this may go in another direction. You today spoke about Gaura-lila as an adventure, and one name for Bhagavan as the great adventurer is Urukram. So in this Atmarama verse from the Bhagavatam, Atmaramas chamunayo nirgranta api urukrame kurbanti haitukim bhaktimitam bhuta gunohari. That's a famous verse from the Bhagavatam. And one day the inspiration came. It was not in my plan, but the inspiration came that this Atmarama verse ultimately has to be talking about Mahaprabhu. It came. Of course, I didn't have any idea in which way to justify that, but eventually the different inspirations came, and then I talked with some Sanskrit devotee scholars to see I'm too crazy speculating all this, or it's possible that the grammar of the verse fits that. And they gave blessings to that possibility. And one of the main words that triggered that was the word Urukrama in this verse. Because Urukrama, again, is the great adventurer. And again, Krishna's Mahaprabhu is the greatest adventurer. He's in the greatest adventure he can ever be. So he's tasting Radha Bhav. Gadadhar is, again, disappearing behind the curtain. Mahaprabhu is bathing himself in the glory of his success. And Gadadhar disappears completely. So we need to have the proper eye to appreciate Gadadhar in his disappearance. That's even more glorious than Mahaprabhu's tasting of Radhabhav, so to say. With all respect, of course, to Mahaprabhu's tasting of Radhabhav. So sometimes example is given, like when a father is instructing the child, like teaching the child to how to ride the bicycle. So in the beginning, the father will be with the child next, no, like taking him along with the bicycle, because if not, no. But eventually he will like let the child, but he will be close. And when he sees that the child starts like to become anistita, the father will be quick to more and more till he sees, okay, the child now can. No? So the father will not be close to the child, because that will be disturbing for the child. He will be at the distance, but he still will be looking. Oh, how nice my child! How nice he rides bicycle. No? Delighting himself at the distance. So similarly, Gadadhar Pandit is instructing Mahaprabhu into Radhabhav, person to person, daily basis, and gradually Mahaprabhu starts to ride the Radhabhav bicycle, so to say. And Gadadhar disappears, but he's at the distance witnessing that. No? Even if physically he's not there in Samadhi, he's having darshan of Mahaprabhu's experience. No? Even if they say that every day after Gadadhar instructs Mahaprabhu in Gambhira, in Tota Gopinath, Mahaprabhu goes to Gambhira. Gadadhar is not going to Gambhira, but from Tota Gopinath, Gadadhar is witnessing in his inner vision how well Mahaprabhu is doing his homework, so to say. Of course, again, when we are saying Gadadhar is delighting in the distance of Mahaprabhu's tasting of Radhabhav, his delighting also will take a form of deep suffering. Why? Because remember, Gadadhar is Sri Radha, and Sri Radha cannot tolerate even one drop of perspiration falling in the face of Krishna. When she sees a drop of perspiration, she immediately thinks like, similarly to how the manjaris will see a drop of perspiration in Sri Radha and think, what we have done wrong? Why she's perspiring? Some anxiety is there. No? So similarly, Sri Radha is very concerned, even if a drop of perspiration is falling. But now in Gaura-lila, it's not only one drop of perspiration falling. No? But Gadadhar knows my beloved now is hitting his face on the wall and bleeding and rolling on the ground and falling. No? So in one sense, Gadadhar is delighting, in one sense happy for the success, but the price of the success is very intense. And of course, that's why Mahaprabhu is covered by the halo of Sri Radha as well, with her hue. So also we talked today a little bit about Tota Gopinath, because the question came like how Gadadhar, Krishna Chandra Prabhu presented how Gadadhar could tolerate almost a year in separation of Mahaprabhu. And we mentioned this idea, that Tota Gopinath was actually the heart of Mahaprabhu coming outside. Mahaprabhu in Radhabhav, experiencing Krishna, and that Krishna experienced in Radhabhav by Mahaprabhu is manifesting outwardly in the form of Tota Gopinath. Many times it is said in our tradition that the deity is first realized in Samadhi and then manifests outside. Right? The particular form it's taking externally, it's just the form that is residing in the heart of the sadhu who is invoking the presence of the Lord there. So similarly, in this case, what Mahaprabhu was experiencing is taking the form of Tota Gopinath. So when Gadadhar Pandit is seeing Tota Gopinath, he's kind of realizing, Mahaprabhu is successful, basically. No? You have realized my moods properly. You are experiencing yourself, as Srila Maharaj says, Swabiraha, no? Krishna in the mood of Radha experiencing Krishna. You are doing your homework nicely, basically. And then, of course, again, Tota Gopinath becomes the Istadev of Gadadhar Pandit. In other words, Gadadhar is worshipping the success of Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar is worshipping the heart of Mahaprabhu. What Mahaprabhu is experiencing and takes a form, Gadadhar is worshipping that on a daily basis. You understand the point? So here, when Gadadhar is worshipping Tota Gopinath, actually what we have is Radha worshipping Krishna's heart. No? No? Because Mahaprabhu is Krishna, and he has succeeded in experiencing Krishna through the mood of Radha. So Gadadhar is worshipping Mahaprabhu's success, basically. No? The fruit of Krishna's success, Tota Gopinath. Tota Gopinath is like the embodied confirmation that Mahaprabhu tasted Radha Bhav, so to say. And it's still with us. We can have darshan there if you go to Puri. No, for me, it's my favorite place in the whole Jagannath Puri. I mean, difficult to say my favorite, but in this case, I don't have too much doubt about it. Tota Gopinath. I mean, many incredible other beautiful places for sure. So, interestingly enough, again, Tota Gopinath is personifying the heart of Mahaprabhu, his success. And when Mahaprabhu is closing his own lila, it is merging into that deity. The Tirobhava of Mahaprabhu is in Tota Gopinath. Because Tota Gopinath is Mahaprabhu's own heart. It's what he's all about. That's what Gaura-lila is all about, tasting Radha Bhav. So Mahaprabhu enters there and continues his lila and manifests. And again, this Tota Gopinath was the Istadev of his most beloved. Also, that's when I said one Mahaprabhu entered Tota Gopinath because Tota Gopinath was worshipped by Gadadhar with such love that Tota Gopinath also is holding all the love of Gadadhar that he's offered. So that's so attractive to Mahaprabhu. So he's kind of entering that portal forever, so to say. So we have been sharing some of those ideas. I'm still doing the summary from today in the morning, talking how Mahaprabhu is Krishna as much as he can be. No? Krishna is known as Rasaraj. You have heard that statement. He's the king or Rasik Sekar. He's the king of the tasters of rasa. But technically speaking, that term is to be applied to Mahaprabhu. Because in Vrindavan, Krishna is lacking some experience of rasa. And that experience only comes in Gaura-lila. So then his title, Rasaraj, becomes fully justified. Fully tasting the mood of Sri Radha. So in that sense, Mahaprabhu is fully Krishna, fully Rasaraj. And of course, Sri Gadadhar is fully Radha in her utmost expression. So, and as we were mentioning also today, this is a very unique, inspiring, for us sadhakas, very inspiring Leela, because here we are seeing both Krishna and Radha adjusting to the need of the moment and being willing to shift their mood, so to say, to satisfy the need of the moment. Like we say, Krishna is Purusha, Parama Purusha, Purushatam. He has Purusha Bhav. But as we know, or we will see, in Gaura-lila, he wants to taste not Purusha Bhav. So he has to shift. So he's pretty accustomed to how to taste Purusha Bhava. but he's making all his best effort to enter into the shoes of Paraprakriti, Sri Radha. And similarly, Radha's Gadadhara is completely willing to adjust her mood to serve her beloved in this unique new mood side.
Not so much Vamya Bhav.
That was I was thinking. Yeah, we will talk about that. Dakshin Bhav. Gadadhara will be more Dakshin Bhav. More submissive. Dakshin means like right wing or submissive. Vamya Bhav means more like non-submissive, left wing. So Radha is characterized by Vamya Bhav, rebellious and audacious and confrontative. but in Gaura-lila, Radha appears mostly in Dakshin Bhav to adjust to the need, to the mood of service, the need of the mood of service in the Lila.
Is then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Vamya Bhav because Krishna is in Dakshin Bhav, according to Sahitya principles. So is in Gaura-lila it's shifted again, or both are in Dakshin Bhav?
Yeah, I'll go there in a few minutes if you allow me. So because I was planning to share a little bit of that. Yeah, that's interesting, unique way of Gaura-lila. But the point I want to make, because before I forget, that by seeing Purushotam, Parampurusha shifting to Prakriti Bhav, that's a big teaching for us also. Because we have our own Purusha Bhav, enjoying spirit. At present, we are mostly identified sometimes with those needs coming from Purusha Bhav. So in Gaura-lila, we receive that lesson. If you want to taste the highest thing, you have to do away with your Purusha Bhav. Like God himself is doing. We have some Purusha Bhav. He has full Purusha Bhav. Of course, he's Parampurusha. He can have Purusha Bhav. That's not a problem. For us, it's a problem because we are Prakriti. We are not Purusha, but we want to play Purusha. So Purushotam, he not only has Purusha, but he has Purushotam Bhav. No? So he's doing away with Purushotam Bhav to adopt Prakriti Bhav. Or Para Prakriti Bhav, more specifically. And Gadadhara is Radha herself. And again, and Gadadhara is doing the greatest sacrifice to facilitate that. Not only Krishna is doing a sacrifice to shift to Prakriti Bhav, but Gadadhara is doing this greatest sacrifice to dedicate himself to provide that. And we are invited to serve that. Try to imagine. But there is again a price to serve in that realm. As they are doing such sacrifice themselves, we are invited to do our part in sacrifice as well. And also, I'd like to repeat something that we maybe briefly mentioned today, because I think it's very important to pound that post, which is what we mentioned, that according to the mood in which Bhagavan is, there are so many unlimited forms of Bhagavan, there will be a specific need of service. The more specific the description of Bhagavan, the more specific the need of service. In the case of Mahaprabhu, there's a very specific need of service, ultra specific. Because he's in the words of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, there's a very nice expression that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami uses for Mahaprabhu, which is Paratattva Simma. Paratattva Simma, which means the highest limit of the absolute truth, the maximum reach. That's very interesting. As Bhagavatam refers to Krishna Swayam Bhagavan, Chaitanya Charitamrita refers to Mahaprabhu as Paratattva Simma. As we say today, Bhagavatam will say Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami will reply, Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Krishna. Again, it's the same person. No? Be careful not to think dualistically, two people competing with one another, no? Because our mind generally goes there. So, Paratattva Simha, Sriman Mahaprabhu, he has a very specific need of service. So, for us, there's a very specific service we are invited to offer. As we mentioned, Mahaprabhu is the most vulnerable face of the Absolute, and the most volcanic at the same time, paradoxically. So if we understand what Gaura-lila is about, we will understand how urgent is the need of service in that realm. Because as I mentioned, if we don't have a very clear idea of who God is, we won't even think about serving him. There's people who will speak about, okay, God exists, I want to go to heaven, but they don't know who God is, what's going on there, what they will be doing there. So they don't think too much in terms of serving God. Mostly they think, I think I'll be doing in heaven the things that I like the most here, but without karmic interruption, which for us will be like a form of hell, basically, in the sense of I will be doing the thing that I like the most, pretty selfish, without interruption. That doesn't sound like very divine. So without having a clear idea of God, we do not have a clear idea of who will be there with him. We will think again, I will doing what I like the most, and God will be there somehow in some place, and he will show up for the Sunday feast or something, or whatever. Then if you go to something a little bit more specific, like Vaikuntha, no, we have a more clear description about Narayan in Vaikuntha. But Narayan in Vaikuntha is Atmaram, which means self-satisfied. He doesn't need anything because he's God. And everyone knows he's God. The awareness in Vaikuntha is Narayan is God. So therefore, there's not too much to offer to him, in the sense of he doesn't need anything because he's God and he's self-satisfied. So that's why the prevailing mood there is Shantarasa, which is more like a passive witnessing of the glory of God, but not so much an engagement in seva. And for those who are somehow engaged in seva in Vaikuntha, which are not all, are mostly those who obtain what we call Samipya Mukti, which means residing in Vaikuntha as a personal servant. They are not serving Narayan because they feel that he needs something. They are serving Narayan out of a sense of duty. He is to be served because he's God. From that place, Dasya comes. He's God, he's to be served. Let's serve him. We follow. But they don't feel Narayan is needy. Now, if we go from there to Braj, sometimes it's called Vaikunthavan, the forest inside Vaikuntha, the forest inside the spiritual world. You have a forest and something else is going on there. Then the definition of the Absolute is even more detailed, more precise. And of course, the degree of love is more intense. So Krishna is still Atmaram. He's described as such in the very beginning of the Rasa Panchadhyaya in the Bhagavatam. He's Aptakam, Atmaram, self-satisfied. But he's imbued in an experience of love that, as we talk these days, make him experience certain needs that come out of love. And therefore, the devotees in Vrindavan will serve Krishna out of a sense of necessity. Not so much, I need it, he needs it. No. Therefore, it's not so much just show the things. Okay, I need to feed Krishna. She feels he needs to eat. No? He's skinny. He's about to die. He never eats enough. Of course, that's the Vatsalya Netra, the eye of a mother. You never eat enough. No? So it's always, and so on and so forth. So the point is, in Vrindavan, all the service that is offered to Krishna is out of a perceived sense Krishna needs. No? Like when the gopis hear the flute, actually they are not running behind the flute out of their own personal necessity. When they hear the flute, they just hear Krishna agonizing. And the message says, I'm dying in separation of you. If you don't come quickly, I'm over, I'm done. So the gopis are running in urgency. Again, his need became their need by way of identification. So again, still Krishna is Atmaram, but he's also, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, Pararam, which means supremely dissatisfied, divinely dissatisfied. He's self-satisfied on some level, but on top of that, he's divinely dissatisfied, because love creates its own its own need for more. So again, the more we conceive of God as Atmaram, as self-satisfied, the less we conceive ourselves in service to him. Because he's self-satisfied, there's not too much to offer. There's not too much service necessity. But the more the Absolute is seen as in need, because of the nature of love creates this need. So the more we get close to a form of God that is needy because of love, the more opportunities of service we will have. You understand the logic I'm trying to share? So the closer we get to this pararam, to this divine dissatisfaction, the more chances we have to offer ourselves in service to assist the divine in that dissatisfaction. And service in the moment of greatest necessity will create the greatest remuneration for us. That's what Srila Siddhar Maharaj described when Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, I want to die to leave my body in Kurukshetra. That's a whole other topic. And that's quite connected to Gadadhar Pandit's mood of sacrifice. Then we see the aligning between Gadadhar and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and when he was worshipping Gaur Gadadhar, he says that. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur knew, in the Bhagavatam is described when Krishna meets with the Brajavasi in Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is known for the Bhagavad Gita, mostly, but for us there is, in one sense, a more crucial meeting that took place there. And that's when Krishna is meeting them for the solar eclipse, with excuse of the solar eclipse. And anyhow, that's beautifully narrated, I think, chapter 87 of the 10th canto in the Bhagavatam. 82, sorry, thank you. So at one point, many things happen. I'm going just to the point. Krishna's meeting with the gopis, specifically with Radha. And Krishna is telling her, well, we can get united again here after so long. He starts talking a little bit nervous and a little bit formal. Well, after so long, we are together here again. And the gopis are like, oh. Anyhow. So the point that eventually he's inviting Radha to join him whether to go back with him to Dwarka, to join with him at that moment. But of course, Sri Radha said, it's not possible, because where is your peacock feather? Now, Krishna was coming from Dwarka. He was a king. He was surrounded by royal retinue. You are riding on an elephant. You don't have your flute. You have like a sword. You don't have your turban and a peacock feather. You have a crown. So where is Krishna? Where is my Krishna? Radha is saying. Because you have Braja Krishna, Dwarka Krishna, Mathura Krishna. So Radha's Prananath is one Krishna, not any Krishna. It's very specific. Where is Jamuna? She's asking to Krishna. Where is Govardhan? Where is the forest? Where is Vrindavan? Where is the stage for our Lila to happen? Without the stage, the proper scenario, the drama cannot take place. So Sri Radha cannot meet with Krishna, although she's next to him in one sense. Srila Siddhar Maharaj gives a contemporary example of that. He says it's like if in a soccer match, the ball is about to enter the, how do you call this? Also goal? Okay, the ball is about to enter the goal. And when it's about to enter the goal, somehow someone kicks the ball somewhere else. No? So almost there, it's not happening. No, so Radha and Krishna, they're united after so many years of separation, but the union cannot happen. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's an intimate servant of Sri Radha, so he's thinking, oh, my Swami must be in such a need in that moment, such a need of service, support, consolation. She's in front of her beloved, but the union cannot take place. So in that moment, in Kurukshetra, she's in her most needy moment. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, therefore I want to die in Kurukshetra. I want to die in that particular moment of her greatest need. I want to enter that portal and serve her in the moments of her eternal need forever, her greatest need forever. So it's interesting that actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that, but he never made the practical arrangements for that to happen. So he was making a point by saying that. No, it's not literally, I want to die in Kurukshetra physically, but I want to leave my body entering into that chamber where my mistress is in her greatest need. And I can give myself, because there will be such a need of service in that moment.
Where is Bhaktivinoda saying that?
Where is he saying that? What's the exact reference? I don't recall it. We can search for the exact reference. I mean, I know from Srila Siddhar Maharaj, he repeatedly will say that, but I don't recall if he shares the exact quote. But of course, if he's saying so, it must be somewhere, maybe some song or something. So the point is that he didn't make the arrangement, but he wanted to make that point. No? Let's enter there. Let's serve in the greatest moment of greatest need. And Srila Samaraj will say, if you serve in the moment of the greatest need, you will receive the greatest remuneration. But he's quick to clarify. And the greatest remuneration will be way more energy and inspiration to offer in service. No, it's not some private treasure for me to enjoy separately. But it's I will be blessed for greatest capacity to serve, please. So that's the situation in the higher realm. So much need. No? So much need. And therefore so much service opportunity. As I said before, we think we are needy, but when we reach the plane of divine love, then we will understand what neediness actually means. We now think we are suffering. When we reach the realm of divine love, we will really understand what does it mean to suffer, and apply everything else to every other single emotion that will exist there eternally in its original form. So all, not only Radha and Krishna, each one of our acharyas, all of them have this great need to serve. So that creates in us the opportunity to serve that need.
Das gibt uns eine Möglichkeit.
That's the key of success. Identify
Das ist der Schlüssel für Erfolg.
with the need, the necessity of service that our masters and mistresses are having,
Meister
and offer our lives there.
und dort Leben zu geben.
It always comes to mind this beautiful verse, probably, at least personally, one of my favorites, glorifying Sri Nam, that was composed by Srila Rupa Goswami. That's found in, I think, Lalita Madhava, if I'm not mistaken. If not, Vidagda Madhava, one of the two. In Lalita Madhava. Tundi tanda vini ratimbi tanute, tundavali labdaye, karna krodha kadambini ghatayate, karnar buddhe vyaspriham, cheto prangana sangini vijayate, sarvendriyanam kritim, no jane janita kiyadhiramritaye, krishneti bharnam dvai. Sorry, I cannot contain to recite the Sanskrit. It's very beautiful. So, in this verse, Rupa Goswami, basically he's saying,
Swami sagt in dem Vers,
there is so much nectar contained in these two syllables.
in diesen zwei Silben Krishna.
If you say those two syllables, Krishna, there is so much nectar there.
So viel Nektar.
I cannot fathom that.
Ich kann's nicht
That if I can pray for a blessing,
wenn ich eine Segnung erflehe.
generally you won't find Rupa Goswami asking for things. But if I can ask for something, I will ask for something. I will ask for 1,000,000 tongues,
Ich möchte 1,000,000 Zunge haben,
because somehow I only have one.
aber ich habe nur eine.
And when my tongue enters in contact with the unlimited ocean of nectar of these two syllables, one tongue is so little to do justice to that nectar. One tongue. But if I can pray for something else, Rupa Goswami is greedy in this verse. Oh, please give me 1,000 billion years, because I only have two. No. One tongue, 2 years, that's better. That's an improvement. It's double. And also talks to us about, we can talk a lot, but we should listen, hear more than what we talk. That's why we like to talk a lot, but not learn to listen. We have two. We don't have 2 tongues in 1 year. We have 1 tongue and 2 ears. So we can say something, and that's a lesson for me, which I have a long tongue, as you can see. I talk a lot, so I have to know where to make a note and hear, learn to listen. But Rupa Goswami says, nonetheless, 2 years is too little, too cruelty of the Creator. Why only 2 years? So he's imploring, give me 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000 tongues. So again, he's very needy. Rupa Goswami is in a great necessity. He's desperate. Now, this is not just a professional composition that sounds cool, as they say in the United States. It sounds nice. I will pray for a few years and tongues more, and that will sound nice. No, he's crying, and as Krishna Chandra said, they are not composing this like correcting it and editing, but it's just like outpouring. So in the same way, we are to serve Guru, Parampara, higher Vaishnavas, understanding that principle. They are serving the most needy. Therefore, all of this succession is permeated of divine neediness. So that's our great fortune, because so much service we can offer. So again, Radha's Gadadhara, going back to our topic, Radha's Gadadhara is the best example of this. We have God, Mahaprabhu, in his most needy moment, and Radha Gadadhara fully identify with that service necessity, making that his whole life and soul. Because technically speaking, whenever Shakti Man, Bhagavan is in a particular mood, it's the duty of the Swarup Shakti to see the pleasure of Bhagavan in that particular moment. No? Bhagavan chooses to taste whatever. Being a king like Ramachandra, Swarup Shakti personified will adjust to provide the perfect counterpart in the form of Sita. But the problem, if you want to call that a problem, of course not a problem, but in most of these appearances of Bhagavan, no? Again, Krishna still retains his Purusha Bhav, no? Ramachandra or other similar forms. But but Mahaprabhu is not, he's Krishna, but it's not in the mood of Krishna. But he wants to be in the mood of Radha. You understand? In other appearances, okay, Radha dabs as Lakshmi, as Sita, in all these forms, she retains the Shakti position, so to say. And Bhagavan retains the Purusha position, and they adapt. But in Gaura-lila, something strange happens, which is Purusha wants to taste the side of the Shakti. So what the Shakti will do? Will it become Purusha itself, or will it become even more Shakti, so to say? No, even more dedicated, in this case by emptying himself. So that's another way of expressing Prakriti Bhav. No? It's not that, okay, Mahaprabhu wants to take Prakriti Bhav, so Gadadhara will take Purusha Bhav. So, no, in this unique mood of Gaura-lila, Mahaprabhu stays in Prakriti Bhav, and Gadadhara will go to the mega ultra Prakriti Bhav, so to say. The highest degree of dedication and emptying himself. So as we were mentioning before, no, in Braj, Sri Radha is expressing this bam. Yeah, sorry.
No.
Oh. Okay. Krishna Chanda cannot stop translating. We already know what happened. So as we were saying, no, in Braj, Sri Radha is expressing Bhamya Bhav, no? Left wing gopi. No? But in Gaura-lila, to fit the demands of the lila, to serve her beloved in the corresponding mood, she enters into Dakshina Bhav. Because that's what will be anukul or favorable in this particular lila. No? So Sri Radha immediately knows what's the most favorable possible disposition I can offer in this particular lila. As we mentioned, it's not that Sri Radha has this mood or that mood. No? Her mood is whatever is favorable for Krishna. She says in the last verse of Shikshastakam, I mean, Krishna can embrace me, can kick me, can do whatever he wants. And basically she's implying, I will adjust to that so I can continue offering service in the most favorable possible way. She has no mood of her own, like separate from what's more favorable to Krishna, basically. So for me also, this will be basically a very easy way to how to say, I don't want to enter into debate like spirit, but there is some current which proposes that Mahaprabhu, something called Gaur-nagar Bhav. I'm not here condemning anyone, but I'm just making it clear that at least in our tradition, that's not so appreciated, let's say, based on what is said in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Gaur-nagar Bhav means basically that you try to relate to Mahaprabhu in Madhurya Bhav, to have romantic direct interaction with Mahaprabhu in Gaura-lila. So in our tradition, that's a little quite like, that's not tasteful. Okay, yeah, Krishna Chanda will put it more straight. Because why we do not align with that? Because we are, again, on this principle, that's not anukul for the mood of the lila. No? Because if you relate to Mahaprabhu, trying to have romantic interaction with him, you are bringing him back to be Krishna. You are reminding him You are Nayaka, you are the romantic
bist der
hero.
romantische
But
Held.
Gaura-lila is not about
Aber Gaura-lila ist ja gerade.
Mahaprabhu trying to remember that he's Krishna.
Möchte ja nicht.
Gaura-lila is about Mahaprabhu trying to forget that he's Krishna
Genau das vergessen.
and trying to enter into the mood of Radha. You follow? So if you can't approach him like trying to relate romantically with him, that gets in the way of the main purpose of Gaura-lila.
Das wäre gegen den Zweck von
That's not favorable, anukul,
Das ist nicht angekommen
to the lila.
zum Lila.
So again, we are to identify with the happiness of the object of our service.
Wir möchten
So if I know in this lila,
was
Bhagavan is
das Richtige
pursuing Radha Bhav, I will enter into a mood that will facilitate that.
oder was immer gebraucht wird, das werde ich.
But if I remind him, you are a romantic hero, let's have some conjugal enjoyment, that's kind of sabotaging the main purpose of Gaura-lila.
Wenn du denkst, ich möchte zu Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in einer romantischen Beziehung stehen, sabotierst du
Mhm.
alles.
So, and also personally, I really appreciate how in our particular Bhaktivinoda Parivar,
In der Linie
which
von
is the lineage that comes from Bhaktivinoda Thakur,
der Linie von Bhaktivinoda.
how Bhaktivinoda Thakur has very nicely balanced
Hat das sehr schön balanciert.
and presented the position of Gadadhar Pandit.
Die Position von Gadadhara ist so schön präsentiert.
It's very unique how in our line, Bhaktivinoda Parivar,
Linie,
Gadadhar is being approached and Gaur Gadadhar Tattva is being approached
Gadadhara, Tattva wird beschrieben.
in a very balanced and insightful way.
Balanciert
Mhm.
und tiefst reflektiert.
Because at least what I know, I've tried to do some research.
Ich habe versucht zu
In other traditions,
in anderen Traditionen.
there's not too much like exploration of Gaur Gadadhar Tattva. What does it mean? What's the glories and position of Gadadhar Pandit? You won't find that too much.
Das wirst du nicht so viel finden.
And in other traditions,
In den anderen Traditionen.
you have the other extreme, which is Gaur Nagar Bhav.
Das ist das andere
Mhm.
Extrem.
They speak about a lot about Gadadhar Pandit,
Dann sprechen sie so viel über Gadadhara.
but in the direction of Gaur Nagar Bhav,
Aber eben,
No?
dass nur
like making Gadadhar she's Sri Radha
ist wie Radha.
and she's giving conjugal enjoyment to
Und
Mahaprabhu,
sie hat einen romantischen
and we
Austausch mit
and
ihm.
we can have that as well.
Und du könntest das auch haben.
So for me, these are two extremes.
Das sind zwei
In
Extreme.
one, Gadadhar is basically not mentioned,
Einmal ist Gadadhara gar
and
nicht.
the other, Gadadhar is too much mentioned, but
Zu viel, aber immer noch
not in the proper context.
immer noch in der Stimmung von Radharani.
So personally, I found how Bhaktivinoda Thakur and figures like Srila Siddhar Maharaj and other acharyas have continued like plumbing the depths of this Gaur Gadadhar Tattva in a very like tasteful way, so to say, very accurate, which is very unique to our Parivar.
Das ist eine ganz spezielle.
Not to develop some superiority complex and say we are better than everyone else,
Aber es geht nicht um
but to appreciate the unique jewels coming from
Man kann überall
for
alle
our family.
Juwelen wertschätzen.
And as we already mentioned, for Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaur Gadadhar, where there is his Istadev.
Bhaktivinoda
No?
Thakur ist Ishtadev.
That was the
Die Herren seines Herzens sind
the
Gott.
exclusive bhajan chamber of Bhaktivinoda Thakur was Gaur Gadadhar.
Das intensivste Kammer von Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
As we mentioned, serving Radha in her hour of greatest need.
Sie dienen
When he said this about living in Kurukshetra, but also serving Radha in her hour of greatest need will mean serving Gadadhar.
Das heißt, ich diene Gadadhara.
And Bhaktivinoda Thakur is serving Gadadhar, is worshipping Gadadhar. So anyhow, some thoughts I want to share today. If possible, can I conclude with one verse? Just one verse, one more verse, which we have once here today. Well, one verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita in this case, which is very simple but very sweet. It's found in Antya-lila, for those Pandits, researchers, Antya-lila chapter 7, verse 164. Okay, this is one of the few verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita where something is being said about Gadadhar Pandit. But as we were mentioning this day, no, the hinting is there. If you have the eyes to see, a few lines, a few words are opening something very deep and profound. So the verse says like this: Pandite Prabhura Prashada Kahana Najaya Gadaira-Gauranga Bali Janre Loke Gaya. So Pandite Prabhura Prasad kahana na jai. Nobody can say
Niemand kan zeggen.
how merciful Prabhu, Mahaprabhu,
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is.
how merciful he is to Gadadhar Pandit.
Wie zu Gadadhara ist.
That's the first line. Nobody can conceive how merciful Mahaprabhu is to Gadadhar.
Gnädig Chaitanya Mahaprabhu zu Gadadhara ist.
And the second line says,
Zweite Linie sagt,
people know
die Leute sehen,
know the Lord, know Mahaprabhu
sie kennen Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
as Gadaira-Gauranga or Gadaira-Gauranga, who means the Gauranga of Gadair.
Gauranga von Gadadhara.
So that's the verse.
Das ist der
So a few minutes we try to extract a few, hopefully, some jewels from this ocean.
Aus diesem Ozean von diesem
No.
Vers.
So of course it begins saying how merciful Mahaprabhu is to Gadadhar.
Wie gnädig ist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu zu Gadadhara.
And of course we can also by implication understand, well, that's happening because how merciful Gadadhar is to Mahaprabhu.
Warum ist das so? Weil Gadadhara so gnädig ist zu
No?
Chaitanya.
Sometimes you have, for example, in Godrum, you see Gaur Gadadhar of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and some other Gadadhar deities. They are different mudras.
Haben sie verschiedene Mudras gelegt,
No?
Handstellungen.
So in Godrum Gadadhar is like this.
In Godrum sind sie so.
So what's the meaning of this?
Was bedeutet das?
Because sometimes also there are some deities of Nityananda like this.
Man hat auch Deities von Nityananda.
But the same mudra means something different according to the functions of each of them.
Es sind verschiedene Bedeutungen.
And Mahaprabhu many times appears like this, or sometimes appears like, no, one hand up, one hand down.
Eine oben, eine unten.
So sometimes the hand up means he's tasting
Er
Radha Bhav,
Radharani Stimmung.
the heights of his inner experience.
Maharaj Nirjat.
Yeah, Korite Ashwadan. Raga Marga Bhakti Loke Korite Pracharan. Okay, thank you for reminding me of that verse. This is a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is speaking Prema Rasa Niryas Korite Ashwadan. Mahaprabhu is tasting
Mahaprabhu kostet.
Prema Ras.
Diese
Ja.
kostet, was zu Radharani ist.
He's relishing that internally.
Und das ist seine Haupterkenntnis.
And the hand down,
Warum hat er eine Hand nach unten?
which means he's distributing the result of that tasting.
Das Resultat von diesem Kosten.
Raga Marga Bhakti Loke Koriche Pracharan. He's spreading the news about Raga Marg, Raga Nuga Bhakti. So we have these two arms of Mahaprabhu, but sometimes Nitai and Gadadhar are like this. So this mudra of Gadadhar and this mudra of Nitai correspond with each of the hands of Mahaprabhu. Nitai is like this, means he's giving Mahaprabhu to the world. It has to do with the hand below of Mahaprabhu, like what he's giving to everyone. And Gadadhar like this means Gadadhar is giving himself, his own heart, rather, to Mahaprabhu, so he can be successful in his lila and taste the heights of Radha Bhav. You follow? No? So here we are saying how Mahaprabhu is merciful to Gadai. But why? Because Gadadhar is so merciful to Mahaprabhu, giving himself completely. So in that sense, we could say, to add a further layer of turning, because yesterday we mentioned the Bhagavatam, when in the zenith of the Rasa Lila, Krishna reappears after the Gopi Gita and pronounces this verse again, Naparayam nirabadya sanjayam sadhu kritam vibudaya sapiva tamava jandurjaram geha srinkala jambrishya sabbas pratyatu sadhana. Krishna is basically saying to the Gopis, I cannot repay for the love you have for me. No. I'm eternally a debtor. I cannot do anything. But Sanatana Goswami interprets this verse and Krishna saying, although I cannot repay, I will try my best to repay. So once in a day of Brahma, I will come as a sadhu. I will sing the glories of your love. I will try to have that experience. I will try to do something about it. Trying to decrease my debt of love. So Krishna is appearing as Mahaprabhu, trying to repay Sri Radha. But what we can say is that in Gaura-lila, Krishna becomes further indebted
Krishna wird jetzt noch mehr
to Radha's Gadadhar
zu Radharani's Gadadhara.
because she's giving
Jetzt
more
gibt
than
er
ever to
noch
him
mehr als
on
je.
a new level. No, Gadadhar is giving himself to such a degree to Mahaprabhu
So tief,
that Krishna's debt only increases.
dass die Schuld
Huh?
noch mehr zunimmt.
So I will say that's why he'll also go into the second line of the verse. That's why Mahaprabhu is called Gadaira-Gauranga,
Heißt der
Huh?
Gadaira-Gauranga.
the Gauranga of Gadai.
Der
He's purchased by him. He belongs to him. He's indebted to him eternally more than ever. If Krishna's indebted to Radha in Braja-lila, what to speak in Gaura-lila? Debt is only increasing. Negative numbers, zero. Less than zero. That's how it works. So this Gadaira-Gauranga is similar to when Raghunath Das Goswami was put under the care of Swarup Damodar. He was called Swarupera Raghu. You are now the Raghu of Swarup. No? Das Goswami was instructed by Swarup Damodar, and he was given that name. No, you belong to him. So similarly, Mahaprabhu was instructed by Gadadhar, and not only instructed but eternally indebted. So now he has this name, Gadaira-Gauranga. So just for you to know that Mahaprabhu likes that name a lot. Every time you address Mahaprabhu's Gadaira-Gauranga, you are reminding him of his eternal debt of love toward Gadadhar. And I'm sure he will take a very special glance at you and say, "Oh, you know that about me, and you are willing to assist me in how to repay this debt somehow." Because again, Krishna manifested, although it never began in time, Gaura-lila to repay Sri Radha somehow. But now as Mahaprabhu, he's further indebted.
It's like a materialist who makes some business. He wants to make some money, but while this, he gets further in debt. He takes some debt, but he wanted to make money, but he gets much further.
Yeah. We have the perverted reflection over here. What's going on in Nityanavada? Yeah. So we have the eyes to see. If you go to, how do you say this place in the United States where they're all making business with the investing and all that stuff? How do you say that in English?
Wall Street.
The Wall Street. So if you go to Wall Street and you have the eyes to see, you will conclude in Gaura-lila and the eternal indebtedness of Mahaprabhu. This indirectly talking about that. The same dynamics are happening eternally in God's heart. So that's the vision of an Uttam Bhagavat. No, he will be in Wall Street relishing Gaura-lila. Not to imitate. No, you cannot imitate that. So my point is, so Krishna created quote unquote again. No, this Gaura-lila manifests for Krishna to repay his debts, but he ends up becoming even more indebted. So someone may ask, so what do we need? We need a third lila, maybe for Krishna to repay the debt or something. Someone may ask that. No, we may, some other manifestation of God needs to come to make a second attempt of repaying, so to say. Because Krishna is completely indebted, completely overwhelmed as Mahaprabhu, what to do? But no, we don't need another lila actually. But what we need is to be of service for that lila that is already there. We who may be considered ourselves, we are the most significant creatures in comparison, but somehow we have come to the shores of Gaura-lila. So by the grace of Guru, Sadhu, Parampara, we are receiving the knowledge, the information that such a thing exists. And not only we are receiving that, we are receiving the opportunity to offer some service to Mahaprabhu. Not only by talking about the glories of Sri Radha, which is how Krishna tried to repay his debt, but also by extending that to Sri Radha and Gaura-lila's Gadadhar and trying to say something about Sri Gadadhar, and trying to offer some seva, ideally to Sri Gadadhar. and helping in that way Mahaprabhu, trying to decrease his enormous depth of love. No? It won't decrease, it will still increase. That's how it works. That's the dynamics of Lila.
There's one thing how we decrease the debt.
There's one,
One way how we can decrease the debt.
okay,
Um,
tell us, please.
this, my fucking Mohan told me
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
He said, because Radhika has a very intense desire to increase the service of Krishna. And she wants more to come. And that's why she doesn't make any condition. That's why she's Karunamai.
Hmm.
So now finally when Krishna, after being, it's so beautiful how you describe Maharaj, so falling more in debt to Gadadhara, now he wants to pay back and he goes and spreads the holy name around.
Mm-hmm.
So actually this is Radhika's desire. And so now finally, he's doing some things and he brings in more souls
Servants.
to the eternal service. And Radhika is like overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
by that. And she says, now I will put you
Okay,
that,
A few zeros out, I will say.
Does it mean this Pachalila is not actually something external? It's
Yeah,
completely internal.
yeah. I mean, that's the deepest conception of the notion of preaching, sometimes say, prachar. You can approach prachar as we need to get more numbers and more people and more structure, or you can think, I can help my Prabhu to decrease his depth of love by creating more recruiting, you say in English? Recruiting more candidates for the seva of Sri Radha, for seva of Sri Gadadhara. Because again, there's so much need of service. There's never enough servants there. So that's a very esoteric way of conducting. And that's how our acharyas have conceived the notion of prachar. Again, it's not just external expansion, so to say, but it's internal expansion of the circle of service for the need, the deepest need in the lila. No? Although the person who may be here in the class for the first day may not have a clue that's going on. That's the actual idea, no? But ultimately it converges there. Even the person given the prachar sometimes may not have an idea of what's the ultimate, the highest intention behind the prachar. But ultimately it has to do with recruiting new members for that inner circle, and thus helping Bhagavan decrease his depth, providing more support for the need of service. So that should be the ideal spirit to conduct our, if we are included in that particular area of service, our prachar. Yeah. Thank you so much for adding that. And I think I don't know if there are some questions or comments, or I think we can put the katha to rest. I mean, it's always nice to also leave some further longing. That we may feel that's killing us, but also that's giving us hope for tomorrow and the next day that we can continue. But if there are any comments, questions, maybe more related to the topic, I will say, maybe we can spend a few minutes. Yeah.
I don't know if this is related, you can say, but what is your connection to Gaura-lila? You asked this today morning to Krishna Chandra. Maybe you can also share from your life how Gaura-lila came to you and what they mean to you.
Okay, something can be said. Something may have to be hidden and something may have to be shared. Yeah. But yeah. I don't know, but generally what I can recall, like the first moments I've heard about, because of course in day one you don't hear it in the first day in the temple all the things probably. So I'm asking forgiveness if some of you are coming here for the first time and I'm hearing all the things and it's like, what? No, so sorry. Excuse me. Sometimes too high, too low. Sorry, it's so difficult to navigate those waters. But I remember the first times that I started to hear about Gadadhar and Gadadhar being Radha. Like the very first description of that was something very like capturing for me. And I personally always have felt lots of like affinity towards Srila Bhakti-Rakshak Goswami Maharaj. And from day one, and for Bhaktivinoda Thakur as well. I mean, I don't want like to choose these two, this one, but in those two directions, there was always some special thing going on by their grace. Again, not my merit. Maybe past some scars, previous life, I don't know. And even if there are past some scars from previous life, that's their mercies, not my merit. But of course, in time, I came to know, okay, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Sridhar Maharaj are very much inclined toward Gaur Gadadhar. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is worshipping Gaur Gadadhar. He's writing songs. He's elaborating on the notion of Nitya Navadvip. Like as the Goswamis, I mean, we will talk more on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Avirbhav, so I don't want to spoil that day. But as the Goswamis really explored Braj, so to say, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, whom we call the seventh Goswami, we call him the seventh Goswami because his campaign has so many parallels to that of the six Goswamis. And one of them is, as the Goswamis explored Braj, the glories of Braj, he explored the glories of Navadvip. Navadvip Dhammahatmya, Navadvip Bhavataranga, and so many other books, songs he wrote. Kodrum, Bhajan Upadesh. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj also, he offered such unique insights into the nature of Gadadhar, the position of Gadadhar. Incredible. So that was like the beginning, so to say. And in time, of course, that creates some affinity, some calls, some scars, and you cannot but be thirsty for more. So yeah, so I remember like 10 years, or maybe, I don't know, more than 10 years ago, I don't know, 15 years ago. But some inspiration came like, there's so little said about Gadadhar, and at the same time, it's so important. So I want to compile everything that is being said about Gadadhar into one single place. So I started, I mean, that it's in Spanish. And of course, in time after finishing, quote unquote, finishing, the compilation, so much more things kept coming. But for me to engage in that particular like research also ended up shedding more light and more light. And in time, I came to know about some special souls that blessed me with their association, who worship Gaur Gadadhar, who have that particular affinity. Krishna Chandra Prabhu being one of them. Some other friends, close friends. Tamal Krishna Prabhu also, a close friend of mine, and some others. That whether they have the Gaur Gadadhar as Thakur Jesus deities, or whether they have this like special affinity in that direction. So, and again, in time, further inspiration came to write and to develop some of these ideas, like I've been trying to share today. Like trying to play out what's the implications of these things that are being said in Shastra in a very, I don't know. I felt that inspiration to purify myself, engaging in that seva on some level. I felt, okay, that may be hopefully a contribution to our Sampradaya as well. So a few words about that. Yeah.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yes.
I want to know what you think about, because many worship Gaura-lila.
Mhm.
And we know there's a special mercy, especially this distributing mood is in Gaura-lila,
Mm.
to get the holy name.
Mm.
But from the point of view of Raganuga Bhakti, when you worship Gaura-lila, actually it tends a little to Sakyaras.
Mm.
So can one say, if one has an inclination for Madhurya Ras
Mm.
and worshipping Gaur Tattva in the mood of Raganuga Bhakti,
Mhm.
with a tendency towards Madhurya Ras, can one say then very naturally one will arrive at Gaur Gadadhara's feet?
Yes, I'm just looking for a specific quote in that connection, but I may not find it. There may be too much to look at. But something from Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, who is basically paraphrasing what you just said. Um, Yeah, I mean, I put in the search option the word Puri for Puri Maharaj, but of course the word Puri from Jagannath Puri is so much easier. Ishvara Puri also, so anyhow. But basically, I can find the verse there because Srila Puri Maharaj also composed a whole song for Gaura-lila. But basically, yeah, the idea is that the point that you mentioned, those who have an affinity for Manjari Bhav in Krishna Lila, so to say, the parallel corresponding inner worship will be that of Gaura-lila. And those who have the inclination towards Sakya Bhav, the corresponding expression of Krishna Balaram will be Gaura-Nityananda. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I have a follow-up question to Krishna Chandra's question.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel in myself a black and white thinking, and I feel like, okay, when I give space to the attraction to Gaura-lila or some impulse in me that I like Gaura-lila, then this is lower, and I suppress and put away because I feel shame. That's not. Then I'm fallen, and Gaura-lila is more higher, and I want to be there. So how to overcome that, or do you know this kind of thinking or something like that?
Yeah, of course, as we were talking the other day, that sounds more like racism, as we say the other day, no? Like this is a higher thing and everything else is low, but in a way that is not healthy. No, we become black and white, or as you mentioned, even if there starts to be guilt or shame, and we say that shouldn't be happening. So I think it's important to understand that, again, when both Nitai and Gadadhara are so close to each other, I like to share a few verses that I always like to quote in this connection of how much one loves each other, and how much if you worship one, you have to have so much love for the other, because if not, the worship won't work. These are verses from the Chaitanya Bhagavat. So there are two verses from Chaitanya Bhagavat. I'm missing the chapter here in the quotation. We can look it later. I'll give it straight the translation. It says, this is the vow of Gadadhar. He will never look at the face of someone who offends Nityananda. Gadadhar Pandit will avoid to be seen. Gadadhar Pandit will avoid to be seen by whomever does not have love for Nityananda Swarup. And then comes the other verses from the other perspective. Whomever receives the merciful glance of Gadadhar will be able to know Nityananda Prabhu. And with whomever Nityananda is pleased, such a person will be able to know Sri Gadadhar.
Diese Person.
So this does not give any place for black and white thinking, or this low, this is bad. That's why I concentrate here because the other guy is inferior. You have to love all of them, because if we miss loving some, we won't be loving the others actually. So the challenge is that, no, that I have affinity in one particular direction, that doesn't mean that I'm not loving everything else. So that shows that we may need still to develop the way we conceive, we feel, we experience, because if still is too exclusive, it means it's not the natural way how the heart should function. As we mentioned these days, if I love God, I will love everything that is in connection to Him. And everything is in connection to Him. Everything. So what to speak about Gadadhara and Nityananda? I should be loving it, the candle, the harmonium, this cushion, every atom. Because Sambandha, everything is tied to the absolute. So I should have affection for every atom. What to speak of Nityananda? So it's important to measure our love in that way. If I love God, I should be loving everything else. If I love Gadadhara, I should be loving Nityananda. If I love Nityananda, I should be loving Gadadhara. If I love Advaita, I should be loving Sri. But that's the nature of love. You don't have an excuse to say, I love this so much, but no, there's no but. If you love that so much, and that is the center, you have to love everything else. You cannot just love something so much and hate everything else. That's not love. So the very definition of love is like, if you really love, there's nothing outside of that. Love is all embracing.
But how to reconcile with those concepts, like, when you are married, then you don't love other persons, but then you don't look left and right. So if you are with Gaura-lila, then you don't. You don't hate them, but you also don't look at them.
Better you look at them. I'm reading here. If you don't look at them, they won't look at you at all. And the example you're giving is not accurate, with all respect, because I mean, you can be married and loving your wife or your husband in a certain way, but it doesn't mean that you cannot love everyone else. You may not be loving everyone else as your husband, but you will be loving it. You can love everyone else. You follow? So you can love Gadadhara in a special way, but it doesn't mean that you are not loving everyone else, including Nityananda. The love may be different, as the love for the wife and everyone else is different, but still it's love. In potential, that's there. Huh? You follow my point? Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a wife, Bhagavati Devi. He loved his wife. We won't say he hated his wife or something like that. But we won't say either that he didn't love everyone else, because he was only limited to love his wife. No, he was loving his wife, he was loving Krishna, he was loving Gaura-lila, he was loving everyone. But the love and the expression of that will take different forms. That's it.
And Maharaj, also, the Madhvacharya, he speaks about different Vedas. Like there is a fundamental difference between the soul and God, between the soul and matter. One should see this. And from one soul to another soul, there's fundamental Veda. But then he says, but there's never a Veda between one form of the Lord and to the other. So you cannot make
Advaita.
Otherwise one have Veda Bhav.
Yeah, we are being dualistic. Yeah, we are saying that there's more than one God, so to say. We are entering into the dualistic. Veda means difference. So we are thinking, okay, Gadadhara and Nityananda, and that's challenging. I wrote a whole chapter in my book about non-dual thinking, because in our tradition we have so many forms of God that if we don't have a proper non-dual foundation, we may end up being polytheistic, like thinking in terms of many gods. And I've seen devotees doing that. Like, okay, I pray to Nrsimhadev, and then Vamandev, and then, but they speak of them as if they are different people. No? But Nrsimhadev is Mahaprabhu. Of course, there's difference in Bhav, but in tattva, in metaphysical truth, in ontology, they're the same person. Follow. So in our tradition, it's especially dangerous because we have so many forms of the absolute. I call this like polymorphic monotheism. No? One God, many forms. No? So we have Dasavatar and so many more. So we can end up thinking polytheistically, like many gods. But no, it's one God, many forms. That's what Akrura says in the Bhagavatam. How is the line? Bahumurti eka murtikam. Bahumurti eka murtikam. Eka murtikam is one form. Bahumurti means many forms. So you are one, the same, non-dual reality person, but you can take different forms.
I have a small objection with the quotes you cited.
Let's start the debate.
No, it's not a debate.
I'm joking.
It's like why I should accept this as a guideline. When I compare these quotes, I'm not so expert in that, but it's not. This quote is maybe
Which quote?
This quote, like which you mentioned about Gadadhara and Nityananda from Chaitanya Bhagavat, just the last.
So you have to speak with Vrindavan Das Thakur, not with me about that.
Yeah, but how maybe you can help how to reconcile. Since it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Bhagavatam, and I heard like instructions given at the beginning of the work and at the end of the work. They are important, and the subject which is getting repeated. So what you cited, does this fall into that category, that this is a very interesting and a very important instruction, that we should not make difference, or that Gadadhar will not look at a person who neglects Nityananda? And I don't remember exactly what you say, but is this so? Is this a very important hint? Because it's not written at the beginning, it's not at the end, it's also not in the middle, and it's not being repeated. So how important is this?
It's very important.
Why?
I think you should understand why.
Maar je had gerade gezegd dat we geen dualiteit hebben maken. That you shouldn't make any dualism, otherwise you make a dual.
Yeah. Yeah, if you make differences between these two aspects of the absolute, that's projecting one's own dividing mind into the realm of the non-dual realm. Transcendence is non-dual. Advai Gyan Tattva. So, of course, there is described in that's from Purma Mimamsa, what you refer to, these different ways of stating how a statement is important, what says in the beginning, what says at the end. That's a way of giving us an idea, but it doesn't mean that if something is not the beginning, at the end, and in the middle, we shouldn't. I mean, like to give an example, what's the most important line of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam for Jiva Goswami? Probably Krishna's tu Bhagavan Soyam. That's not in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. I mean, one could say it's in the first canto, but it's not in the beginning. That's not the first verse. That's not the second verse. That's not the first chapter. That's not at the end. So we should discard that line because it's not the beginning or at the end. No. So this idea, what's at the beginning, at the end, yeah, that's true. But it doesn't mean that whatever doesn't fit to that particular standard is not so important. Again, Gadadhar Pandit. We are talking about Gadadhar Pandit. Does Gadadhar Pandit is mentioned directly in the first verse or in the last? Probably not. Doesn't mean that's not important, Gadadhar Pandit. Is he mentioned throughout the whole work? Not so much, actually. So what you refer to are like general standards to establish the importance of something, but it's not this the only way to establish something. So following that criteria, yeah, these verses from Chaitanya Bhagavata that we quoted are very important. Because they teach us how to address the different forms of the divine without racism, as I said, without this dualistic spirit. Because if we approach that with dualistic spirit, that very dualistic spirit will prevent us from reaching there, actually. It's even contradictory to say, I'm approaching God with a dualistic spirit. You are not approaching God. You are going the opposite direction. So unless we learn that lesson, which is in one sense basic, we will not get closer and closer. We'll be disturbed by the variety in the lila, basically. Because we'll start saying, no, I cannot look at that. This is higher, this is lower. Be careful with that group over there. They're our enemies. and it's not like that. So in our particular situation, we should appreciate not only Gadadhara and Nityananda. I mean, we should appreciate Jatila, Kutila, Chandra, all those who seem to be the bad guys in the movie, so to say. We should understand they love each other, even if in the lila, no, they seem to not like Sri Radha, so to say. That's only on the surface to create some dynamics, but actually they love each other. In these leelas where sometimes Sri Radha is about to die, and Jatila comes, Kutila comes, and they cry. Chandravali comes, and they cry at her feet, show their affection for her, acknowledge her superiority. So everyone loves each other in the spiritual world, to put it simply. No? Everyone loves each other. So we won't enter there if we don't have that same capacity. Yeah. Thank you for your question. So
thank you so much.
No.
We can offer
thank you.
everything we spoke and heard. That today was a prayer day to them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, let's not forget this an extension of Radhastami. This is our attempt to continue praising her in this unique form and grasping her glories and her multiple expressions of service, basically. No? Yeah, let's pray. Let's pray today to be blessed with some mercy, some adhikar, to be more and more identified with the necessity of service that they are all about. No? Jai Shri Shri Gaur Gadadhar Ji ki Jai, Pandit Shri Gadadhar Ji ki Jai, Shri Sachinandan Gaur Hari ki Jai, Shri Harinam Prabhu ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ji ki Jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Bol, Vancha Kalpataru Vishya Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patita Nam Pavane Pyo Vaishnavebhyo Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai.